To all our friends out there, okay. God, that's mind-blowing. And it only happened a few days ago.
Yes, 1 day ago.
Okay. It's like
1 day.
1 day ago.
1 day ago. 1 day ago, somebody left us a message. She doesn't know what they're talking about. Okay, good. Let's go to page 19 on prolonging one's lifespan. From the learning from the writings of the hope-filled teachings of Nichiren Daishonin by Daisaku Ikeda. Now, once again, as always, that starts on page 19, the lecture. But we're going to start by reading the whole Gosho, and we're going to read the background first on page 956. The Gosho itself is Gosho number 129 on page 954. Okay, so the background on page 956. Excuse me if I keep smiling and laughing throughout the course of this evening. Nichiren Daishonin sent this letter in 1279 to the late nun Toki, the wife of Toki Jonin, whom she had married after her first husband died. When Toki Jonin became a lay priest, she became a lay nun, calling herself Myojo, Wonderful Eternity. This letter explains the principle of changing karma or destiny. Buddhism characterizes karma as either fixed or unfixed, depending on whether the time when one is to receive the reward or retribution from that karma is fixed. Both types may be either good or bad. Unfixed karma has a weaker influence and can be overridden through simple effort. Fixed karma is more deeply rooted and harder to change. It is the determining force of the basic tendencies of one's life. Fixed karma may also be interpreted as karma whose effects are destined to appear at a fixed time. Ajahshatru, for example, was destined to die on the 7th day of the 3rd month. Does everybody understand what I just said? Let me say it again. This letter explains the principle of changing karma or destiny. Buddhism characterizes karma as either fixed or unfixed, depending whether the time when one is to receive the reward or retribution from that karma is fixed. You understand? So fixed or unfixed is based on a timing situation, right? Both types may be either good or bad. Unfixed karma has a weaker influence and can be overridden through simple effort. Fixed karma is more deeply rooted and harder to change. It is the determining force of the basic tendencies of one's life. Fixed karma may also be interpreted as karma whose effects are destined to appear at a fixed time. While Buddhist scriptures describe a variety of causes of karma, the Daishonin's Buddhism teaches that the deepest causes are one's support or slander of the mystic law. These causes lie deep within one's life, beyond the ability to sense or conceive. Nevertheless, on prolonging one's lifespan, asserts positively that strong faith and sincere repentance can change even fixed karma. Okay, everybody's with me?
Yes.
So is there any kind of karma that can be that cannot be changed? No. Okay, and that's the whole point of this Buddhism. All right. So, reading from the Gosho on page 954. This is the letter back to Toki Jonin's wife, who has been sickly for some time. Okay, and she's in the midst of battling a progressive illness that's affecting her health in a way that's made her rather pessimistic about ever feeling well again. You know how that is. If you feel bad long enough, you kind of just learn to live with it, and you just kind of say, that's my karma, I'll just accept this suffering. And what the Daishonin's whole intent here is going to say is that is the exact opposite of what we should ever do, and that we should cherish every moment of our life, and we should push no matter what to extend it as much as we possibly can. That's how much of a treasure it is. So the Gosho starts on page 954. There are two types of illness, minor and serious. Early treatment by a skilled physician can cure even serious illnesses, not to mention minor ones. Karma may also be divided into two categories, fixed and unfixed. Sincere repentance will eradicate even fixed karma, to say nothing of karma that is unfixed. The 7th volume of the Lotus Sutra states, this sutra provides good medicine for the ills of the people of Jampadvipa. These words can be found in no other sutra. All the sacred teachings of Shakyamuni's lifetime are the golden words of the thus come one. For countless kalpas they have never contained the slightest falsehood. The Lotus Sutra is the truth of all truths taught by the Buddha, for it includes his declaration of honestly discarding expedient means. Everybody understands that? What is he saying there then? The Lotus Sutra is the truth of all truths taught by the Buddha, for it includes his declaration of honestly discarding expedient means. What he declared there was then many treasures confirmed the truth of the Lotus Sutra, and all the other Buddhas lent their tongues in testimony. How then could it be false? Moreover, this sutra contains the greatest of all secrets. It tells of a woman who suffers from illness in the last 500-year period of the 2,500 years following the Buddha's passing. But did you catch what he was talking about when he says about honestly discarding expedient means being the significance? Why? It's only until you reject all those provisional teachings that you can accept with the correct understanding the correct teaching. Okay? So as long as there was any aspect of the provisional pre-Mahayana or pre-Lotus Sutra teachings that had validity and should be relied on, they're a source of confusion. They're a source of division. Do you understand? Okay, so that's why he's saying the Lotus Sutra is the truth of all truths taught by the Buddha, for it includes everything I've said up until now as an expedient means, and only now I'm telling you the truth. Only rely on the Lotus Sutra. That's why the Lotus Sutra is the truth of truths. Because it's the sutra that reveals the truth that Shakyamuni didn't attain Buddhahood under the Bodhi tree for the first time. Okay? The lifespan chapter is the key. All right? So he says, it tells of a woman who suffers from illness in the last 500-year period of the 500 years following the Buddha's passing. King Ajatasattu broke out in virulent sores all over his body on the 15th day of the second month of the 15th year. 50th year. Not even the skills of the great physician Jivaka were enough to cure him. It was fated that he would die on the 7th day of the 3rd month and fall into the great citadel of the hell of incessant suffering. Everybody remembers why? Why was Ajatasattu, first of all, broken out in sores? Why was he going to die? Ajatasattu was a prince who killed his father, the king, Kimaboso or something. I don't remember his dad's name, but the bottom line is that he was a disciple of Devadatta. Okay, and so Devadatta had led him to do this, the 5 cardinal sins, right? He had done 3 of them. Okay, so he was all screwed up. But in the Lotus Sutra is qualified that he was saved. All right, so all the pleasures. After he's done all this stuff, he's gained the power of his father's throne, everything else, but what good is that when you're all messed up with terrible disease? All the pleasures of his 50 years suddenly vanished, and the sufferings of an entire lifetime were gathered into 21 days. His death was predetermined by his fixed karma. But then the Buddha reiterated the teachings of the Lotus Sutra, entitling it the Nirvana Sutra and conferring it on the king. The king immediately recovered from his illness and gave the offenses that had burdened his heart, and the grave offenses that had burdened his heart vanished like dewdrops. I'm sorry, I guess that was from the Nirvana Sutra, not the Lotus Sutra, but still from the perfect teaching. More than 1,500 years after the Buddha passed away, there lived a man in China called Chien Chen. It was prophesied that he would die at the age of 50, but by following the great teacher Tentai, he was able to prolong his life by 15 years and lived to be 65. Bodhisattva, never disparaging, also transformed his fixed karma and prolonged his life through his practice of the Lotus Sutra. Everybody remembers that, right? The sutra says his lifespan was increased. The persons mentioned above were men, not women, but they prolonged their lives by practicing the Lotus Sutra. Chien Chin lived before the last 500-year period, so his change of karma was as exemplary, as extraordinary as rice ripening in winter or chrysanthemum blossoms blooming in summer. In this age, it is natural for a woman to change her fixed karma by practicing the Lotus Sutra, as it is for rice to ripen in as it is to rice. In this age, it is as natural for a woman to change her fixed karma by practicing the Lotus Sutra as it is for rice to ripen in fall or chrysanthemums to bloom in the winter, which is natural, right? So, when I prayed for my mother, not only was her illness cured, but her life was prolonged by 4 years. Now you too have fallen ill, and as a woman, it is all the more timely for you to establish steadfast faith in the Lotus Sutra and to see what it will do for you. In addition, you can go to Nakatasukasa Basaburo Saman Someno Jo Shijo Kingo, who is not only an excellent physician but a votary of the Lotus Sutra. Life is the most precious of all treasures. Even one extra day of life is worth more than 10 million ryo of gold. The Lotus Sutra surpasses all the other sacred teachings of the Buddha's lifetime because of the lifespan chapter. The greatest prince in the land of Jampadvipa would be of less consequence than one blade of grass if he died in childhood. If he died young, even a person whose wisdom shone as brilliant as the sun would be less than a living dog. So you must hasten to accumulate the treasure of faith and quickly conquer your illness. I could ask Shijo Kingo on your behalf, but while some people would prefer to be approached by an intermediary, others may feel it reflects a lack of earnestness on the part of the individual concerned. It is extremely difficult to fathom another person's mind. I have experienced such difficulties on several occasions. Shijo Kingo is one who would feel offended if the request came from anyone but the person directly concerned. So in his case, it would not be advisable for me to intercede. Just ask his assistance yourself, frankly and sincerely, without an intermediary. When he came to see me in the 10th month of last year, he told me how grieved he was about your illness. He said you were probably not overly concerned then because your illness was not yet serious, but that it would surely become critical by the 1st or 2nd month of this year. His words deeply saddened me. He also said that Toki depends on you as a staff to lean on and a pillar for support. He was very concerned about you. He is a man who never gives in to defeat and who greatly values his friends. If you are unwilling to make efforts and to heal yourself, it will be very difficult to cure your illness. One day of life is more valuable than all the treasures of the major world system. That's a very important quote, so I'll say it again. One day of life is more valuable than all the treasures of the major world system. So first you must muster sincere faith. This is the meaning of the passage in the 7th volume of the Lotus Sutra that states that burning a finger as an act of offering, states that burning a finger as an offering to the Buddha and the Lotus Sutra is better than donating all the treasures of a major world system. A single life is worth more than a major world system. You still may have years ahead of you, and moreover, you have encountered the Lotus Sutra. If you live even one day longer, you can accumulate that much more benefit. How truly precious your life is. Write down your name and age yourself and send your messenger with it to me so that I can pray to the gods of the sun and the moon. Your son, Iyobo, is also extremely worried about you, so he will offer the recitation of the verse section of the lifespan chapter to those gods. Respectfully, Nichiren, reply to the layman. Okay? So going on, and I don't, just a quick spoiler so you know, President Ikeda will tell you about this in the lecture, but she went on to live another 20 years. Okay, so that's just so you didn't know that about her, just like Shijo Kingo lived another 19 years after the Daishonin died. So, but going now on to the lecture on prolonging one's life on page 19 of the Hope-Filled Writings of Nichiren Daishonin. And rather than reread what I just read, I'm going to go right into the lecture section, okay, because we just read the whole Gosha, so I would just be rereading, since it's only a 2-page Gosha, I'd be just rereading what I just read. I'm going to start here, all right? So, there is no greater treasure than life. The teachings of Buddhism exist so that we can live our lives to the fullest. We practice faith in the mystic law so that we can lead long and healthy lives. In the letter we are studying this time on prolonging one's lifespan, Nichiren Daishonin encourages the lay nun Toki, who for some time had been troubled by ill health, that she can definitely transform her karma through strong faith in the mystic law. For me, on prolonging one's life calls to mind many memories of my mentor, second Soka Gakkai President Josei Toda. On September 27th, 1957, Mr. Toda spoke on this writing at a lecture open to all members. I recall attending that meeting and listening to his talk. That was during the same month he made his historic anti-nuclear declaration in which he proclaimed, "We, the citizens of the world, have all an inviolable right to live. Everyone has a right to live." That my mentor lectured on prolonging one's lifespan, a writing that underscores the preciousness and sanctity of life, in the very same month is significant. After Mr. Toda's death, I ensured that recordings of his lectures and addresses were preserved in the form of phonograph records so that they could be passed on to future generations. These records were a compilation of my mentor's heartfelt guidance. His lecture on prolonging one's lifespan was in fact the first record in the series to be completed. In that lecture, after reading from the text, Mr. Toda declared vigorously, "Suffering from illness is a means by which you can eradicate your negative karma. Live long lives placing your faith in the Gohonzon. You mustn't die young." His powerful voice still resonates deeply in my heart. Okay? So, what does he say there? He says, consider illness a benefit. Consider illness a source of challenge that you can utilize for the sake of changing your karma. Understand, it's not a benefit from the discomfort that you feel or even the threat to your life that it might be. But if you utilize that challenge correctly, it can assure and absolutely make manifest the attainment of Buddhahood in your present form, which you will carry over into your next life, no matter what the outcome of the challenge or the victory over that challenge. So he says, suffering from illness is a means by which you can eradicate your negative karma. Get rid of your karma this way. Live long lives placing your faith in the Gohonzon. You mustn't die young. His powerful voice still resonates deeply in my heart. It was also around that time that Mr. Toda spoke of resuming the morning study sessions of what I fondly refer to as Toda University, which had been discontinued for some time due to his poor health. My mentor was deeply and solemnly committed to fostering and educating people, to raising genuine successors who could accomplish Kosen Rufu even if the effort cost him his life. Now that example is why I can never give up on a Wednesday when I don't quite feel good. Okay? President Toda and President Ikeda have already laid down living examples for the appropriate or proper attitude I should have. Now all of you have to make that same assessment for yourselves. But I read it in the Gosho. I read it in the Gosho, then I read it in the lives of the stories of what's been accomplished since World War II with the Soka Gakkai, with President Ikeda. So this is where it comes from. As Nichiren says, one day of life is more valuable than all the treasures of the major world system. Don't forget how many times Nichiren encouraged people when he himself was very ill. Okay? Day after day, President Toda gave every last ounce of his being to train me. Because the mentor always knows that it doesn't end with the mentor. It's a continuum. The disciple is going to take the banner and take the vow and carry on. So the mentor, even if he uses up the last bit of his life, has used it to make sure that his life is eternal.
Yes.
Do you understand? This is the way we're all supposed to live our lives. Not just big leaders. Bodhisattvas of the earth. True disciples of Nichiren. He says, profoundly moved by how much effort he was making on my behalf. What made the impression on Daisaku Ikeda to live the life that became the life as President Ikeda? What he saw President Toda do. And how much it impressed him and made him think, this isn't normal. This isn't normal behavior for people to give of themselves in this way. This is putting the law actually first rather than your own life. Not begrudging your life. This is the epitome of not begrudging your life. Okay? So he says, I studied furiously. I studied furiously. So I would understand why he's taking this position and how to convey to others why that's the correct position. And applied myself to Soka Gakkai activities with single-minded determination. That's the appropriate reason to practice. Okay? Not to become a big leader. At this point in time, again, this is like there are 50, 100 people doing this. Right. Don't forget, this isn't like a huge organization that's got lots of leaders and positions to try and fill. His proposal to restart our study sessions came in the autumn of the year just before I turned 30. Now don't forget, he had already been told he was going to probably die by the time he was 30. So he was in ill health from 19. He's an 11-year member at this point in time. Today, I forge ahead each day with the same feeling President Toda had at that time, exerting myself to the fullest, not holding anything back, trying to carry it on to my successors. How can we make the most of this precious day that will never come again? For what purpose will we use our precious lives in this existence? In this installment, let us look at passages from On Prolonging One's Life and study the secret of changing our karma or destiny and the essence of faith for leading a long and healthy life. Now, this pertains to our good friend Jean and the struggle that's happening with her son. We know several people right now that are facing issues that are, challenging as it relates to the sustaining life itself. So take what we're about to read here very seriously and please take it to heart. Everybody, RD, you know who I'm talking to. When I prayed for my mother, not only was her illness cured, but her life was prolonged by 4 years. This is from the Gosho at the bottom, page 21. Now you, the lay nun Toki, too have fallen ill, and as a woman, it is all the more timely for you to establish steadfast faith in the Lotus Sutra and to see what it will do for you. In addition, you can go to You can go to Shijo Kingo, who is not only an excellent physician but a votary of the Lotus Sutra. Life is the most precious of all treasures. Even one extra day of life is worth more than 10 million ryo of gold. The Lotus Sutra surpasses all the other sacred teachings of the Buddha's lifetime because of the lifespan chapter. The greatest prince in the land of Jambudvipa, the entire world, would be of less consequence than a blade of grass if he died in childhood. If he died young, even a person whose wisdom shone as brilliantly as the sun would be less than a living dog. So you must hasten to accumulate the treasure of faith and quickly conquer your illness. Continue on page 22. Encouragement to the ailing lay nun Toki. The lay nun Toki had long been plagued by illness. She had been a widow with a son when she married Toki Jonin, and the challenges and stresses of her new life may have taken their toll on her in various ways, because that would have been a difficult thing to be assimilated into another family when you already had a child. It appears that as her ill health dragged on, she had grown pessimistic about her prospects for recovery. In this writing, however, Nichiren Daishonin asserts that she can definitely prolong her life based on the teachings of Buddhism. The main theme of this letter is that the power of faith in the mystic law can transform even fixed karma. Karma means actions in the form of thoughts, words, and deeds. Each action becomes a cause, the effect of which manifests at some point in the future as either a positive or negative outcome, depending on the nature of the action. Everybody's with me? Mm-hmm. The type of karma in which effects are destined to appear at a set time and in a set form is called fixed or immutable karma. Everybody understands that? That was always believed couldn't be changed. Pre-Lotus, that can't be changed. While the type of karma in which effects are destined to appear in this way is called unfixed or mutable karma. In this writing, the term fixed karma is used specifically with the reference to one's lifespan. Okay? In the passages preceding those we are studying in this installment, Nichiren emphasizes that just as a skilled physician can cure even a serious illness, we can change any fixed karma and extend our lifespans through the highly effective medicine of the Lotus Sutra. After citing several examples from the Buddhist scriptures to illustrate this point, he assures the lay nun Toki that it is the most natural thing in the world for a woman living in the latter day of the law to change her fixed karma by practicing the teachings of the Lotus Sutra. Do you understand? That's what he was referring to a minute ago when he says, when he said here, he referred to it. He said it also tells about a woman changing herself in the last 500-year period. Okay, that's what he was referring to. He's referring to the fact that the Lotus Sutra contains the story of your life already, lay nun Toki, and what the benefit that you're going to get. He says, the main theme of this letter is that the power of faith in the mystic law can transform even fixed karma. Did I already read that?
Yes.
I'm sorry, where am I then? Am I down here? Nichiren then gives a further example?
Yeah.
Let me go to here. In the middle of page 22, in the passages preceding those we are studying in this installment, Nichiren emphasizes that just as a skilled physician can cure even a serious illness, we can change any fixed karma and extend our lifespans through the highly effective medicine of the Lotus Sutra. After citing several examples from the Buddhist scriptures to illustrate this point, he assures the lay nun Toki that the most natural thing in the world for a woman living in the latter day of the law is to change her fixed karma by practicing the teachings of the Lotus Sutra. Nichiren then gives a further example, explaining how he had prayed for his own mother's illness to be cured. This constitutes great actual proof of the principle of prolonging one's life through faith, as taught in the Lotus Sutra. Nichiren addresses the lay nun Toki, and there I've got this point 8. He's talking about specifically, this is based on the lifespan chapter where he says, we beg you to cure us and let us live out our lives. This is in the section of the parable of the outstanding physician who imparts good medicine to his children who had drunk poison, succumbed to delusion, and implored them to cure their illness. Okay, the episode is a metaphor for the Buddha bestowing the mystic law on all living beings in order to fundamentally free them from sufferings. Nichiren addresses the lay nun Toki in an ardent appeal to deeply touch her life and arouse her into action. He says, in effect, my mother cured her illness through the power of the mystic law and extended her life by 4 years. You too, as a woman just like her, should muster strong faith in the Lotus Sutra. You also have Shijo Kingo, an outstanding physician who is a fellow practitioner of the Lotus Sutra, to turn to. A single day of life is more valuable than countless treasures. The Lotus Sutra is the foremost among all of Shakyamuni's teachings because it contains the lifespan chapter that expounds the eternity of the Buddha's life. Therefore, you mustn't die an untimely death. You mustn't die young. Quickly summon your faith and cure your illness as soon as possible. You have to live, he says, paraphrasing it. You must survive without fail. With this impassioned cry, Nichiren earnestly appeals to the lay nun Toki, seeking to lift her out of the morass of suffering into which she had sunk. The lifespan chapter reveals the eternity of life. Nothing is more precious than life. Okay? So this, I've gotten a lot of hard times when I've had dying pets and everybody's saying, put him down. And in some instances I have, because it was appropriate for me to. In other instances, I was able to stay with them till the last moment of their life, chanting Daimoku with an Omamori Gohonzan in front of them. And I swear you that they've all been reincarnated in this lifetime, in my life, as far as I'm concerned. Okay? So where do I get that from? I get that from, again, the Gosho, not from President Ikeda's lecture, but from Nichiren saying over and over and over again, to struggle and live as long as you can and to never give in to the last, no matter what it takes. So that may sound counterintuitive. That's why a lot of times, give them morphine. Make them like when my father-in-law was ill and you're saying, I hope he just passes. No, he was practicing Nimbutsu. The extra time that he suffered, even though he had cancer, allowed him to convert to Nichiren Buddhism and absolutely change his karma. So you don't want to just think about the suffering of this lifetime as being the end all of suffering, because it isn't. All right? You have to have the wisdom to perceive that suffering is a continuum. like life. It's part of life. It's the good and bad is the same thing. All right? There's no difference. It's what you're experiencing based on this moment. All right? The suffering that some people can experience as agony, you can experience as great joy. It's within your capacity to do so. As the Buddha, that's what this teaching's all about. So that's why we don't give up, we don't give in. I'll show you that. I'm ahead of you all. The lifespan chapter reveals the eternity of life. Nothing is more precious than life, Nichiren Daishonin says. Life is the most precious of all treasures. This is Nichiren's teaching. And toward the end of this letter, he added, a single life is worth more than a major world system. No doubt Nichiren emphasizes the value of life in order to awaken the lay nun Toki's will to live. Please strive to live even one day longer, is the message he seeks to convey. Life itself is infinitely precious. Even a single day of life, to use Nichiren's analogies, is worth more than 10 million ryo of gold, or all of the treasures of a major world system. A single day of life is valuable beyond measure. For that very reason, he encourages the lay nun Toki to live as long as she possibly can. But what's that also say then? If a single day of life is worth that much, what is our life in its entirety worth? Okay? So when we give our life to the Lotus Sutra, can you imagine the value of that? That's not some small thing. There's no amount of gold that could surpass that offering. Do you understand? It's the ultimate offering. Our life is the ultimate offering. The lifespan of the Thus Come One chapter of the Lotus Sutra, which is the essence of Shakyamuni's teaching, clarifies the infinite value of life, truly recognizing that the sanctity of life is the heart of Buddhism. Those who believe in the Lotus Sutra, therefore, should strive to live out their precious lives for as long as they can. The title of this chapter in the Lotus Sutra literally means to fathom or measure the Buddha's lifespan. Among the Buddhist sutras, only the lifespan chapter of the Lotus Sutra reveals the eternal nature of the Buddha's life, and further teaches that this does not apply exclusively to the Buddha. The eternal life expounded in the lifespan chapter also applies to our own lives. We can each awaken to this great eternal life within us just as we are. The lifespan chapter teaches this through the example of Shakyamuni as the Buddha who attained enlightenment in the remote past. Later, Nichiren expounded Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, said that all people could experience this eternal and infinitely precious life as the reality of their own beings. What's he talking about? Come on. Every time I ask this question, it's this actual Ichinen Sanzen. He just described the life state of one who lives their life as the Buddha, recognizes the truth of their life as the Buddha, perceives the preciousness of their life as the life of the Buddha. Do you understand? Okay. And is devoted to others learning that reality, so that all people could experience this eternal. We have a wonderful opportunity in this existence to awaken to the eternity of life taught in Buddhism, to live based on this profound truth, to forge a state of indestructible happiness, and to help others do the same. What is that? Being the Buddha, actual Ichinen Sanzen. Mr. Toda often told, he says, and exactly as we are, right? Without becoming special people or super gakai dudes, right? No leadership level, no nothing. Just us as ordinary practitioners, right? Common mortals. Right. Because all common mortals are actually Buddhas. Mr. Toda often told people suffering from illness, I've taught you this Buddhist practice so that you can become happy in terms of your eternal life, transcending birth and death. So in other words, not so you can just overcome and get a good job and do whatever will make you happy in this life, but so you can enter the realm of birth and death in the realm of Buddhahood. So then every lifetime you will meet the correct teacher, the correct teaching, the correct object of devotion, and will express Buddhahood in your life, in your present form in that lifetime. Okay? So he's saying, Mr. Toda often taught people suffering from illness, "I've taught you this Buddhist practice so that you can become happy in terms of your eternal life, transcending birth and death." So he's saying, utilize this illness, even if you die from it, to attain Buddhahood in this lifetime. Do you understand? That's what he's saying. I've taught you this not to make you comfortable and be able to overcome death, because that's freaking impossible. Okay? But to have death constantly be the gateway to enlightenment, to Buddhahood in your next existence. You can definitely cure your illness. This was Mr. Toda's great conviction. Now, when he says that, you can definitely cure your illness, does that mean every single person is going to recover? No. Definitely curing your illness means overcoming the karmic impediment that kept you in the suffering state of a common mortal versus the victor of a Buddha winning in that battle of life and death. You can definitely cure your illness. This was Mr. Toda's great conviction. When we continue to strive in faith for the happiness of ourselves and others. In other words, why are we doing this? To be the example. Right?
Yes.
It's not just to extend our own life, it's to show everybody else how to die. No, really. To show them how to die. This is how a Buddha dies. I'm not afraid to die. I am going to die. There's no doubt about it. At some point in time, my prayer will not keep me from dying. But when I die, I will die as a Buddha. I will be that example. All right? So he says, this was Mr. Toda's great conviction. When we continue to strive in faith for the happiness of ourselves and others, we will without fail come to discover the eternal nature of our lives. Even if it's the last moment of life, we will attain actual Ichiren Sanzen. We will enjoy actual proof in some form or another of having overcome the hindrance of illness. Understand, that victory is guaranteed. That is why when Mr. Toda gave guidance to those that were swayed by illness and had lost their faith, in their resolve in faith, they had given, I'm going to die. They're only seeing it on that basis. He was very strict in correcting their attitude. He didn't, that's okay, I know how bad you feel. No. He turned them around every time. He would say the truth. You got your head up your ass. Come on, stop this. This isn't about whether or not you overcome this momentary thing. It's about you overcoming this thing that lasts lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. Life is tenacious. What does that mean? It's difficult. It's iffy. It's not always guaranteed. It is endowed with the impulse to survive and the power to heal. The highly effective medicine for drawing forth those innate properties is the mystic law. Ultimately, it is we ourselves who cure our illness. How many times have I already told you that? What does he say? Ultimately, it is we ourselves who cure our illness, while the decision to undertake this battle to do so arises from faith. But does Nichiren answer our prayer and cure our illness? No, we do. We manifest the Buddha nature that already exists within our lives. That's what he's talking about. Not relying on an outside influence. Okay? That's why he says, again, I'll read it all the way through. Life is tenacious. It is endowed with the impulse to survive and the power to heal. The highly effective medicine for drawing forth these innate properties is the mystic law. Ultimately, it is we ourselves who cure our illness, while the decision to undertake this battle to do so arises from faith. Nichiren indicates this in his reference to the treasure of faith. To see illness as an opportunity to transform our karma, this strong spirit and resolve can break through all obstacles and devilish functions and open wide the path to happiness. Like a rocket blasting out of the earth's atmosphere, the passionate conviction of faith that comes from viewing illness as an opportunity to transform our karma can become a powerful engine propelling us forward, not only in this existence, but throughout eternity, enabling us to freely savor everlasting happiness, enabling us to freely savor everlasting happiness. How does that happen? Only through the process of the simultaneity of cause and effect kicking in from us attaining Buddhahood. He's talking about actual Ichiren Sanzen again. Do you understand? All right, so promptly and unhesitatingly seeking treatment. This is so important because a lot of people think I chant, so I'll just chant this away. I won't go see the doctor because I've got the power of the Gohonzon in my life, and I don't need medicine. That's for sissies. Yeah, right. That's bullshit. It's craziness. Nichiren didn't believe it, and so why would anybody else? Did he say, Shijo Kingo, leave your shit? I don't need it. I'm the Buddha. Now he says, man, your medicinal herbs help get rid of my diarrhea. Thank you so much. This is ridiculous thinking. Let's listen to President Ikeda tell you the truth here. Promptly and unhesitatingly seeking treatment. You must quickly conquer your illness. So that's the directive from the mentor. Nichiren is saying you got to extend your life as long as you can so you can be a teacher for as long as you can, so you can be the living example of actual Ichiren Sanzen for as long as you can. All right? You must quickly conquer your illness. Nichiren Daishonin tells the lay nun Toki, once we understand how precious a single day of life is, there is no reason to vacillate about seeking treatment when we are ill. So once we understand that we're this treasure that's worth more than 10 million row of gold, or whatever he said, or a whole major world system, if you really believe the teaching, if you actually have faith in the teaching, then you must do this. Because to not do that is to not have faith in the teaching. You think he's just blowing smoke when he says all that stuff about the preciousness of life. Okay? So he's saying, once we understand how precious a single day of life is, there is no reason to vacillate about seeking treatment when we are ill. Don't put yourself in a situation where you later have cause for regret because you were reluctant or hesitant to take action. Nichiren urges the lay nun Toki to act promptly. Buddhism always conforms with reason. We've already read that. All these goshos run together, really. Okay? There's the true reality will never be anything different than Buddhism. Buddhism always conforms with reason. A Buddhist text states, hasten to do good. The mind of one who is sluggish about doing good finds amusement in evil. In Nichiren's use of the word quickly, I can't help but feel his profound compassion and urgent wish that the lay nun Toki get well as soon as possible and not miss this opportunity to transform her karma. Going on with the Gosho, page 25. I could ask Shijo Kingo on your behalf, but while some people would prefer to be approached by an intermediary, others may feel it reflects a lack of earnestness on the part of the individual concerned. It is extremely difficult to fathom another person's mind. I have experienced such difficulties on several occasions. Shijo Kingo is one who would feel offended if the request came from anyone but the person directly concerned. So in his case, it would not be advisable for me to intercede. Just ask his assistance yourself, frankly and sincerely, without an intermediary. When he came to see me in the 10th month of last year, he told me how grieved he was about your illness. He said that you were probably not overly concerned then because your illness was not yet serious, but that it would surely become critical by the first or second month of this year. His words deeply saddened me. He also said that Toki, your husband, depends on you as a staff to lean on and a pillar for support. He was very concerned about you. He is a man who never gives in to defeat and who greatly values his friends. A disciple's well-being is always the mentor's foremost concern. Page 26. Next, Nichiren Daishonin urges the lay nun Toki to seek treatment from Shijo Kingo, an accomplished physician, and offers concrete advice on how to approach him. With a keen understanding of Kingo's character, he advises her that rather than requesting Kingo's help through an intermediary, she should take up the matter with him herself and sincerely request his assistance. Of course, if Nichiren had asked Kingo to help, he wouldn't have refused. But it may be that the lay nun Toki was the type of person who was reluctant to ask for favors. We can take it that Nichiren, knowing the temperament of both followers and respecting their differences, was explaining the way for them to maintain harmonious relations so that they could readily and warmly support one another. Nichiren put a great deal of thought and effort into writing this letter, offering extremely detailed advice and suggestions so that the lay nun Toki would actually take the step of seeking treatment for her ailment. His conduct provides a model for Buddhist leaders that we should strive to emulate. It is important to unceasingly value and care for each person. Only by translating this ideal into concrete action can we ensure the happiness of all humanity and the realization of world peace. Buddhism is found in compassionate action. To what extent can we pray for and offer encouragement to each person? This is a good question. To what extent are we willing to rack our minds to open the way forward for each youth? These efforts may or may not be seen by others, but Buddhism is found only in such compassionate action. So what's he saying? He's talking about Jigyo Keita right there, right? He's talking about how do I take what I know for myself and what I utilize for myself and make it available to others so that they can understand it, incorporate it, and teach it too. All right? It's got to keep going on. Mr. Toda once declared that religion should focus on helping people become independent and lead strong and vigorous lives. His own conduct perfectly accorded with this. With an earnestness surpassing even that of a parent, he devoted himself to raising new practitioners into people who could confidently take action for Kosen Rufu while grappling with their own personal problems. Once, when a young men's division member was ill and sought guidance from him, Mr. Toda immediately set about helping him. I think you may be vitamin deficient. You have to do something about this. There's a good hospital near my house. You should go there right away to have an injection. I'll go there with you. Another time there was a school teacher who was being unjustly persecuted at his workplace because of his faith and was threatened with being transferred. As soon as Mr. Toda heard this, he went off to the school that freezing winter morning to personally resolve the situation. I don't want to see my disciples suffer, he remarked. If there's anything I can do to help them, I will gladly do it. In this letter, Nichiren Daishonin writes to lay nun Toki, Shijo Kingo's words sadden me deeply. We can imagine these warm sentiments filled with such concern for her well-being, touching her deeply and inspiring her to summon fresh resolve. The Soka Gakkai is a beautiful realm of comrades working together for Kosen Rufu, a realm built through the all-out struggles of the first three Soka Gakkai presidents, unified by the bonds of mentor and disciple and carrying on Nichiren's spirit. Through the efforts of dedicated disciples striving to fulfill the mentor's vision, our SGI network, a precious treasure of humanity, will no doubt spread even more widely throughout the world and far into the future. And we're almost done. If you are unwilling, this is from the Gosho, if you are unwilling to make efforts to heal yourself, it will be very difficult to cure your illness. One day of life is more valuable than all the treasures of the major world system. So first you must muster sincere faith. This is the meaning of the passage of the 7th volume of the Lotus Sutra that states that burning a finger as an offering to the Buddha and the Lotus Sutra is better than donating all the treasures of a major world system. A single life is worth more than the major world system. You still have many years ahead of you, and moreover, you have encountered the Lotus Sutra. If you live even one day longer, you can accumulate that much more benefit. How truly precious your life is. Write down your name and age yourself and send your messenger with it to me so that I can pray to the gods of the sun and moon. Your son Iyobo is also extremely worried about you, and he will offer the recitation of the verse section of the lifespan chapter to those gods. The value of even a single day of life, which is why we struggle in order to try and even one more single day. A single day of life has a brilliance that nothing can replace. It has immense value and is a paean of joy. To rob someone of life is a grave offense that goes against the fundamental law of the universe. Mr. Toda strictly admonished, under no circumstances must you ever kill another. In our attitude toward illness, we need to be fearless. Yet at the same time, we must not make light of the situation. Becoming ill in itself is certainly not a sign of defeat. Becoming ill in itself is certainly not a sign of defeat. Even the Buddha, who is said to have few ills and few worries, struggles with sickness from time to time. And I loved it when he said that because I knew exactly where it was. And it's from the Emerging from the Earth. And the Bodhisattvas of the Earth come out and they say to Shakyamuni, hey dude, what up? In effect, they go, is the world-honored one comfortable with few illnesses, few worries? In teaching converting living beings, can you do so without fatigue and weariness? And do living beings receive instruction readily or not? Does it not cause the world-honored one to become weary and spent? So, in reading that, I love that because it basically said to me, that means a Buddha can be all those things. If they have to ask that question, then it's not out of the realm of reality that a Buddha can be tired, they can have illness, that describes a human being, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Okay? That's what he's saying. When he's saying, even a Buddha who is said to have few ills and few worries. So all of us, even as Buddhas, struggle with sickness from time to time. Accordingly, there will be times when we are confronted with illness, even as Buddhas who have attained Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, actual Ichiren Sanzen. The important point above all is not to be defeated mentally or emotionally by the prospect of being ill. There's no shame in it. There's no fear to have in it. Faith is the source of the fighting spirit to stand up to illness. Therefore, as we noted earlier, Nichiren Daishonin first of all talks about the treasure of faith. Next, it is only natural that we exert ourselves in practical and concrete ways to get well. To simply think, I'm practicing Buddhism, so it'll be okay, or to dismiss an illness as nothing to worry about, reflects a mistaken misunderstanding of faith and amounts to disrespect for one's own life. It is vital that we take action to quickly conquer our illness. Therefore, Nichiren admonishes the lay nun Toki not to begrudge making efforts to cure her illness. Don't just put up with it. You've got to attack it. The mystic law is the fundamental power for defeating the hindrances of illness and death. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is like the roar of a lion, Nichiren writes in reply to Kyo-o. Of key importance in conquering illness are a positive fighting spirit, an effective curative treatment, and a vigorous life force. And in this regard, chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is especially crucial in terms of strengthening ourselves mentally and emotionally, getting the most out of our treatment available to us, and summoning forth a strong life force. So again, I encourage you, death will come whenever death comes. But please try never to feel like, okay, it's all right now. I can die now. I've suffered enough now. No. You suffer until freaking death comes and stops you. You don't stop for any reason. That's what he's saying here. Do you understand that? That's called to the last moment of your life. If you do that, I promise you'll attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Impossible. Okay? But if not, then you didn't treasure your life actually to the last moment of your life, did you?
Right.
Did you?
No.
Please don't make that mistake of thinking that you have the right to turn off a spigot or something. That's not the way it works. Okay? So he says, the mystic, where am I? In this writing, Nichiren, where I tried to keep my ruler so I wouldn't get lost. In this writing, Nichiren says that we should use our bodies, our lives, which are more valuable than even the universe, to praise and make offerings to the Lotus Sutra. To illustrate this point, he cites a passage from the Lotus Sutra about burning a finger as an offering. In our Buddhist practice in the latter day of the law, however, the greatest offering we can make to the mystic law is with our bodies or lives. It is in the form of our voices chanting and our earnest and sincere efforts to share and spread the mystic law. Therefore, Nichiren says if you live even one day longer, you can accumulate that much more benefit. How truly precious your life is. How valuable and precious is each single day that we chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and work to further the flow of Kosen Rufu. How wonderful is each day that we can take part in constructing an eternal realm of peace and happiness based on the mystic law, united in spirit with our mentor and together with the Soka Gakkai. The struggle with illness becomes an opportunity for us to realize this glorious truth. As Nichiren says, illness gives rise to the resolve to attain the way. If a practitioner who upholds faith in the mystic law becomes ill, it definitely has some profound meaning. If a practitioner who upholds faith in the mystic law becomes ill, it definitely has some profound meaning. It could be said that confronting illness is one's route to awakening to the eternity of life, which is actually Ichinen Sanzen. President Toda often said a person who has overcome a major illness knows how to deeply savor life, and those who wage a struggle against illness with such confidence are champions of faith and living long and healthy lives. A member of the doctor's division remarked that people who chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in their battle against illness always brim with appreciation and smiles, an attitude that is itself a sign of their victory over their illness. Of course, people suffer all kinds of illness and disease, and the severity or degree of their illnesses vary. In some cases, a person may be bedridden or physically incapacitated, but those who, through chanting, are battling or have battled illness shine from the depths of their beings. They have nothing to worry about because their lives are infused with Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. They are assured beyond a doubt of enjoying good fortune and benefit throughout eternity, making the 21st century a century of life. Nichiren Daishonin asked the lay nun Toki to write down her name and age in her own hand and forward it along with her, for him to use in praying for her recovery to the Buddhist gods, the protective functions of the universe. In a letter to her husband, Toki Jonin, on another occasion, Nichiren writes, I am as concerned about the illness of your wife, the lay nun Toki, as though it were I myself who is ailing, and day and night I pray to the heavenly gods that she will recover. He prayed for the well-being of his followers as their suffering were his own. In another letter to Toki Jonin, he says, I am praying to heaven that the life of your wife, the lay nun, will be prolonged well into the future. He constantly prayed for the good health and longevity of his disciples. Such was his immense compassion, and the lay nun Toki, earnestly seeking to reply to Nichiren, who had shown such deeply moving concern for her, courageously persevered in faith just as he instructed. Through this united struggle of mentor and disciple, she extended her life by more than 20 years. Hers was a triumphant example of splendidly transforming her karma and going on to live to a healthy, ripe old age, just like President Ikeda is right now. It is recorded that even after Nichiren's passing, the lay nun Toki continued to practice strongly until the end of her days, visiting and seeking guidance and faith from his successor, Nikko Shonin. Emulating Nichiren's spirit, whenever I learn of a fellow practitioner or one of their family members failing health, I sincerely chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo for their recovery. Each day, my wife and I offer strong and deep prayers for the good health, longevity, prosperity, and safety of all our members everywhere. Let us make the 21st century a century of life. Let us make it a century of good health and longevity. May all of you, our infinitely precious members, who are shining examples of such an era, live out each irreplaceable day, each irreplaceable day to the fullest, winning over all obstacles and creating immeasurable and boundless value. My wife and I are always wholeheartedly praying for this every day, and we will continue to do so throughout our lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.